the USA Emergency Broadcast Network, your source for reliable disaster preparedness information.
The views and opinions expressed on this program are not necessarily the views of this station, its management, sponsors, or other hosts. If you have any comments or suggestions about this program, please contact us at radio@usaebn.org. That's radio@usaebn.org.
Welcome to a new Zeta report here on USA Emergency Broadcasting Network. We are live first Mondays of every month here on Blog Talk Radio, and we also do replay on the YouTube channel for Nancy Leader. You can find USAEBN at usaebn.org, and with partnership with Zeta Talk and zetatalk.com. My name is Andre. I'm the host of this show, and I'd like to welcome, as always, back to our show, Nancy Leader from Zeta Talk. Nancy, welcome.
Yeah. Hi, I'm here, and we're going to cover the hurricane season, which is going to be worse this year, per predictions, and also artificial intelligence, and are we really going to get the Terminator coming back? It's in the news a lot. So let's jump in, but first I want to mention the disclaimer. In partnership with USAEBN, Zeta Talk and the Zeta Report will be discussing the challenges of living on a planet beset with change. Rising seas, increasing earthquakes and volcanic activity, weather gone wild, and the worry of what to do in a worst-case scenario. We will also inject Zeta Talk prophecy on what is coming next and advice on readiness plans and safe locations. Whenever Zeta Talk is quoted, please remember that prophecy is not fact. It is opinion. It only becomes fact when it happens, which, by the way, has happened with a lot of their hurricane predictions. The Zetas are remarkably accurate, but have been wrong on occasion. Bear that in mind. For more information on this subject, please visit zetatalk.com or the Zeta Report on YouTube. Any questions from the chat and issues raised in the chat will be addressed toward the end of the hour after the main feature has been presented. Wow. While the 2018 hurricane season is starting off with a bang, hurricanes appeared in unusual places never before experienced with such a storm. This was, in fact, a Zeta Talk prediction. In 1999, for instance, the May cyclone off the Chile-Peru coastline, the first of its kind. This is what... Anyway, this is the Zeta Talk prediction in 1999 said that hurricanes would appear in unusual places, never before experiencing hurricanes. But this year, there was a cyclone off Chile-Peru coastline. Quoting NASA's Earth Observatory, cyclones are not typically found in this region because sea surface temperatures in the southeastern Pacific Ocean are usually too cold. The oceanographic process known as upwelling tends to bring cold water up from the deepest ocean along the Chilean coast. What caused this cyclone, likely caused the record high waves just off of New Zealand coastline, happened almost simultaneously, like a day later. At 78 feet, this New Zealand wave was several feet higher than the last record breaker in 2012. Quoting phys.org, scientists have recorded what is believed to be the largest wave ever in the southern hemisphere, a 23.8 meter or 78-foot monster, the height of an 8th floor building. Well, you can see how the earth where the earth wobble would slosh a cyclone on Chile and at the same time rebound over to New Zealand, and that's exactly what happens, why we're having all these storms and temperature differences. Here we go in Somali. Also in May, the globe experienced a record-breaking tropical storm off Somali. This region, inland from the Gulf of Aden, is not affected by the Pacific, but is affected by the Indian Ocean. What is affecting the Earth, such that these storms are increasing? Regarding the Somali quake, quoting downtoearth.org, Cyclone Sagar is the strongest tropical storm ever recorded in Somalia, and also the strongest storm to venture so far west in the Gulf of Aden since 1885. The cause, per the Zetas, is the Earth wobble, which has been in space since 2004 after Nibiru entered the inner solar system in 2003. How do I know? I, Nancy, know, because in combination with an international team of volunteers worldwide who measure the azimuth, or the location on the horizon, of the rising and setting sun and measure the altitude of the noonday sun in the sky, we found that the North Pole of Earth was forming a figure 8, swinging back and forth and up and down daily. This is well documented. I did this for a couple of years with these guys all over the world, and they knew what they were doing, and they were geologists or whatever, And I said, where exactly, time of day, azimuth, that type of thing, or altitude, boing, 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 practically on a daily basis and it kept showing the figure 8, which is still present today. So I don't measure like that anymore because it was established. Well, Nancy, let's put it that way. Yeah?
And Nancy, this has been well documented. You remember the Inuit tribes elders, that story that started sort of the wobble conversation. Well, I mean, Zeta talk and pole shifting, we're talking about it, but the seasons have changed, and the wobble was being noticed in the northern climes immediately, 2003, 4, 5. They were talking, the Inuit elders are talking about the sun has moved, I think is the quote.
The sun has moved. It's up too much. We get too much sunlight. That's affecting all the melting in the Arctic. And they were actually allowed to be on the mainstream media. I mean, at least,
right.
With like National Geo or NPR or something like that, not CNN. But in any case, it's well documented. You can find that, yes. So, but then the worse it got, the less talk there was allowed. As usual, right. The cover-up just keeps squeezing down.
Well,
but you can actually see this. Yeah?
Yeah, with the azimuth, though, for those folks that aren't into astronomy or map following, azimuth is the degree line or the direction where the sun rises. So that point on the horizon where it comes up, and then if you measure the time and that angle, you can determine east-west where it's supposed to rise normally, and you can refer to old farmers' almanacs to where it's supposed to rise in your area. Yep. But some of that information is being corrupted as well. I'm not saying the actual books, but the internet archives are being changed quite a bit too.
Yeah. I actually have a very old sky map program that's like 20 years old, and they're accurate, like centuries and centuries forward and backwards. Right. And I use that. And what it amounts to is that dead north is 0, dead south is 180, east is 90, and dead west is 270. And you can I go into my old sky map and I say, where is it supposed to be? And then I go and look, and it's really obvious, 20 degrees too far north or whatever. We have a woman in Wisconsin, Mrs. Sakamaki, posts monthly onto the Pole Shift Ning, and she gives me her charts as to where the sunrise was, time-wise and azimuth-wise. And the variation is astonishing. She goes out every day and does this. So people are doing this. And it is, you can verify this for yourself, folks. Just go for it.
It's too far north. It's way too far north on the horizon. That's noticeable.
For us.
Right, for us.
But in other places.
Near Wisconsin, yeah.
Yes, but the problem is that around the world, depending on your country, you're in a different place for the wobble. It goes up to the north, back to the south, lean to the right, lean to the left. And you can see this in Alberto's photos, too, in Italy. Sometimes they get a lean to the right, and when that happens, even sometimes on the same time of day, rather, he'll have Nibiru and the moon swirls skewed on the clock, to be 3 hours further ahead because he's leaning one way or the other. And at the same time, here comes Mrs. Sakamaki's measure. Guess what? She got that too, that same day. That kind of thing. So right. I get so much confirmation, and you can get your personal confirmation, folks, and I encourage you to do that. All right. Logically, climate should be similar when on same latitude around the world. The tilt of the globe for summer and winter means the hemisphere is having a different temperature, but the amount of sunlight at a given latitude should be the same. If Cincinnati, Ohio, and Paris, France are in the same latitude, we should have reasonably. This was the case historically on charts showing the temperatures between 1950 to 1980. And for those of you that are going to go check my YouTube, the photo is there showing you what they measured. And it's the same on the same latitude, pretty much so. If you're directly on the coast, you might have a little of this, a little of that, but basically same latitude. What happened to skew the globe by 2017 such that parts of the globe, such as Europe, all the way to the top of Sweden, began to have warmer temps than Kazakhstan? I mean extreme, all the way up past Finland, all the way to the top of Sweden, baking away, and then you go over to Kazakhstan, and it's just as chilly as the Arctic. And the U.S. would be so skewed. The west coast of the U.S. was far warmer than the east coast. That was at that time that map was taken. And sometimes it goes the other direction, but in general, that's what we've had, really cold temps in the northeast and over there in the southwest baking away. The effect of the wobble on temperatures around the globe is obvious, and the hurricane season reflects the wobble. Until 2017, hurricane paths crossing the Atlantic had remained the same, but in 2017 this changed. The Zetas explained, the figure eight of the wobble creates a churning in the Atlantic. First, land on either side of the Atlantic is pushed underwater during the polar push. Polar push is when the North Pole, the magnetic North Pole of Earth comes over the horizon to face the sun and Nibiru, which is close to the sun, as it's coming toward us. And this is two magnets, North Poles don't like each other, so we get pushed, and that area goes up, and then it leans to the left, to the right, and then ultimately comes back down again before the 24 hours has passed. But that shove of the magnetic North Pole is called the polar push in Zeta talk. Then the North American continent is slung to the east and then to the west as the day dawns, and the bounce back pulls this land back up to the north. The wobble, in short, is churning the North Atlantic in a circular motion. So all of this affects, the temperature everywhere, and depending, all the Pacific temps would sling water up into the Arctic. They would find algae clumps in the Arctic, and people say, "What? How did this make it through the Bering Strait?" Well, the polar push does that, and the bounce back, because the Earth moves, but the oceans try to stay where they are, and we used to have all kinds of evidence like that. In my earlier newsletters, if you want to go back and read all this stuff, it's evidence galore. Okay, the Coriolis effect. What is that? The jet stream and trade winds are heavily influenced by the way the atmosphere curls away from the equator, pushing the air in a circle that first pushes back away from the direction of rotation, and then, back to the west, and then curls around to return to the equator. This is known as the Coriolis effect. There are known hurricane or cyclone spawning regions, thus, such as the hurricanes that form in the Atlantic and strike the Caribbean, or the cyclones that form in Asia and strike the Philippines. Zeta Talk has proven highly accurate in regard to hurricane season predictions because they anticipated the effect of the daily Earth wobble on the oceans of the world. In 1999, they predicted an increased frequency of hurricanes and that they would appear in unusual locations, and they did. In 2005, they predicted the temperature swings, the seasons would almost blend into one another, such that snow in summer would increasingly be seen, and it has. In 2005, they also predicted swirling in the oceans and air would increase, and it has. In 2007, they pointed to the daily Earth wobble as the cause. So what I'm here telling you is I don't have to say in the opinion of the Zetas because they were right. Okay, a prediction that has not yet come true, in the opinion of the Zetas, is that due to the increasing ferocity of hurricanes and cyclones, some coastlines will become virtually uninhabitable. Places where crops are grown but man does not sleep soundly. This was implied for Cuba, but other places around the globe too, but the Zetas aren't saying as yet. They are not saying which will become uninhabitable. In the opinion of the Zetas, the wobble is expected to steadily worsen until the last week and the hour of the pole shift. This is not going to go away, in other words. The effect of the Earth wobble on hurricanes was clearly seen in 2017. Hurricanes invariably travel in a predictable curve known as the cone of uncertainty. In fact, a search of prior hurricanes striking the East Coast or Gulf states showed this evenly curving cone. Whether remaining offshore of the East Coast or heading inland, as Sandy did in 2012, the curve is smooth, but not so in 2017. In fact, no hurricane of record matched the erratic path of Hurricane Harvey in 2017. After making landfall at Corpus Christi and being well inland of that location by hundreds of miles, Harvey backed up and moved along the water to make a second landfall at Houston. This is of record, and it's just, it never happens. The cone keeps moving. Hurricanes do not back up, so what do we expect in 2018? The first ever cyclone off coast of Chile and Peru and the storm landing in Somalia from the Gulf of Aden are a clue. Batten down the hatches. It's going to get worse. And I mean to tell you, Mrs. Sakamaki and Alberto that takes those photos, they know that the wobble has gotten worse. So if you're not familiar with it, go and read my newsletters. They're just galore. We covered it here on the USA EBN show too. I know within the last year, a couple times we talked about the wobble, all the proofs, how you measure the proofs. Well, there was beaches going bare, and South America on one side the beaches, would be dry and the seals and the boats would be just sitting around on the beaches, while at the other side, waves crashing against Chile, and same time, simultaneous, it would be in the news. Unless people are putting two and two together, they're not going to figure this out. We're here to put two and two together for you guys.
Oh, quick side note with the hurricane and cyclone, unusual locations and landings. Did you know that Lake Michigan got its first ever cyclone hit last week? That there's actual radar imaging of Alberto, the cyclone, the tropical depression cyclone, actually landed on Lake Michigan last Wednesday.
I did not know.
So it actually
how
went
apropos.
that far north.
Yeah.
I forwarded that to you, but there's it's a really cool animation of the radar, and it is a cyclone, and it's like right over lower Indiana, just hitting Chicago. And I was watching the weather last week because I live in Wisconsin, as does Nancy, but I saw a spinning system coming up through almost like the New Madrid, right straight up the center of the United States. I'm like, what is that? Is that Alberto? And then I saw this article. I'm like, the weather's been so strange, it's hard to tell sometimes. But when you see it on radar, a spinning system coming up the United States, and nobody's covering this. Why?
I will look for that article, and I will include it on my YouTube that I'm putting together this morning. Fascinating timing. Good Lord. And I'm just, 300-400 miles inland. But we have a storm cellar. We do. We can run down in the basement and batten down the hatches.
Well, around here it rains every day for the past 3 weeks. So it's hard to tell. It's like, okay, another deluge.
Yeah, that's true. The weather's been Aussie all over the world. People talk about it. But, keep your eye on watch Nibiru coming in and the wobble and where this is leading. And remember, you can survive, and survival, boy, have we covered it, but that's not today's subject. But we've gone down to bare bones, naked and afraid here on USA ABN. Yes, we have. Artificial intelligence has gotten a lot of press. Artificial intelligence is nothing more than a computer program programmed to go down certain predetermined logic paths to arrive at a conclusion. It is called intelligence because it can take into account changing data. Thus, it seems that it can learn, but is it really? For instance, if the program is to suggest that what you wear in the morning based on the weather, if the weather were to change radically, the program could swap winter wear for summer wear, thus changing its choice list for the future. And this would seem, the program figured it out. It's intelligent. It realized that the weather has gotten cooler. Now I'm getting winter suggestions as to what to wear. But it's not. It was programmed to do that. Elon Musk is nervous about all this and wants to wire human brains into machines to control machines. How's that for a life? Wired to a machine. And wait till we get to the Terminator. I mean, and then we talk about taking the head off of a body and putting it with a human lung machine or whatever, a blood pumping machine, heart and lung. And then here you have this brain that's alive, that's wired up. Well, that's not really artificial intelligence, but it certainly is a slave. And the Zetas have some things to say about that. Okay, another issue in the press of late is facial recognition. Is Amazon developing systems to help the police? Yes, they are. People are protesting this, but this technology, facial recognition, is hardly new. How many sci-fi movies has this been featured in? The Minority Report, where the hero has to change out his eyeballs to evade his identity being discovered by the retinal scans that seem to be everywhere. It was retinal scanning. So this just goes to show you where, the movies are leading the way, telling you where this can go. 23andMe surveillance is on the increase via many routes. Lately, the TV commercials are filled with 23andMe and Ancestry.com, and I must admit they're seductive. Who would not want to learn about their ancestry? It's so romantic. And for just a bit of money, you can find out about pitfalls awaiting for you. I mean, am I prone to cancer, that type of thing, exposed by your DNA? Go to the doctor before it's too late. Well, it does sound like fun, and now it's for Father's Day. You and Daddy can figure out what your combined ancestry is. Give them a gift, and per the Zetas, this is a way of, they figured out a way to get the public to pay for their DNA databases that the elite are accumulating on you. And believe it, they are, because Facebook information, they were just in the news again today. Oh, it wasn't just Cambridge Analytica that Facebook information was sold to for political purposes. It's like 60 different companies that they wanted to do business with, and instead of paying money, they gave them access to Facebook personal data. And this is now being exposed. We still don't have laws against this. Everybody's using Facebook, can't get away from it. Well, there are no secrets. Get used to it, guys. DNA is certainly available if one has been hospitalized or arrested or maybe given blood to a blood bank, but for most of the populace, this is not on record. Facial recognition is one way to track an individual, as are fingerprints, but a sure way to identify an individual is via their DNA. Per the Zetas, this collection of DNA is nefarious, as the elite plan to use it to sort out survivors in the aftertime. Good workers through door 1, problem or defective people through door 2. And they even had something which a criminal was located because via his relatives. His relatives jumped up as being similar to some DNA from a crime. He had never been recorded, but they rounded up all his relatives and located him that way. And so DNA located the criminal. So, if you're DNA related to a criminal, you might go through door 2 in the future. Who needs criminals in our Facebook was also recently in the news because they provided private information from Facebook to Analytica for political analysis. None of the Facebook members so exposed were asked for permission. Facebook is still running strong, not really changing their ways, and actually they were far worse than we knew. And at 26.3% of the world's populace, as Facebook users, this is a huge amount of information being collected. It should be noted that DARPA, D-A-R-P-A, a Pentagon program, which collected such data as part of its LifeLog program, closed this program down in February of 2004. Actually, February 4th of 2004, the exact very day that Facebook incorporated. Wonder where all that LifeLog info went. The use of drone software was recently in the media when it was announced that Google employees were objecting to their company helping the Pentagon analyze drone images. Computers are faster than humans, after all, and taking images by drones is nothing new for the Pentagon. We know they do that. This program is known as Project Maven, and per the Zetas will help hold down Mad Max gangs in the future during the chaos caused by the Earth changes, and thus it is not a bad thing. If they want to analyze drone data so they can find out where Mad Max is roaring towards your survival camp, let them do it, and that's what the Zetas advise. Okay, Amazon is delivering packages by drones. Driverless cars and buses are employed in cities, though enough accidents are happening that this trend seems to have been reined in. And Alex and Siri are chatting away with households who rely on verbal orders to their electronic servants. Roomba sets out to dust and clean the floors on schedule, to the astonishment of dogs and cats who peek around the corner. These cute ads show them peeking around the corner at Roomba doing its thing. And Ring connects to your megaphone so you can appear to be home, your smartphones, even when you're not home. Drones used for surveillance have been much in the movies such as Star Wars and Imperial Walkers, drone soldiers who fall into a heap when Central Command is taken out, and floating drones that sport Solo and Skywalker on the ice planet of Hoth. Well, they spotted Solo and Skywalker, the floating drone. It's an Imperial drone, and they shot it down, but it was too late. They had already transmitted its information. Such drones can be used for good and for bad. One should bear that in mind. These drones are like the current drones serving the Pentagon and our household, guided by their programming. But are they sentient? Is it possible for drones to be sentient like R2-D2 and 3CPO in Star Wars? Or little Eva and Wall-E, who fell in love? Can robots be programmed to think for themselves and thus assume control of mankind? This is the presumption in I, Robot, that movie, and Terminator movies. Quoting Wikipedia on I, Robot, a robot could not have been killed. A robot could not have killed Lanning, as the 3 laws would prevent it. After the police apprehended it, they discovered the robot is not an assembly line NS5, but was specifically built with a secondary system that bypasses the 3 laws. Sony also claims to have had emotions and dreams. And quoting Wikipedia on Terminator, Judgment Day is referred to as the date on which Skynet becomes self-aware. And per Zeta Talk, this is what intelligent creatures that can spark souls or hold souls is a conscious awareness of the self as different than everything else, not just operating on instinct. So Skynet became self-aware, decides to exterminate mankind, and launches a nuclear attack on Russia, which, in retaliation, launches a nuclear attack on the United States. The Zetas were asked about the possibility of robots becoming self-aware and sentient earlier in the Zeta Talk saga and clarified, robots can only do what they were programmed to do, and despite what the Terminator series would have you believe, robots constructed out of sentient biological material. The Council of Worlds does not allow slave creatures to be so constructed. Quoting Zeta Talk, and this is in the opinion of Zeta Talk, man is looking for a slave class in their desire to have something like, iRobot or Terminator or Wall-E and 3CPO or whatever. So, quoting Zeta Talk, which would never break down or talk back, would always look good, be compliant in bed, foresee one's needs, repair the car, be infinitely loyal, smart as a whip but never look down on the master, and never suffer from neglect. The child's dream. So can you imagine in all of this, if Musk wanted drones or slave robots, and they were tired of collecting all the DNA and moving the populace, the survivors, into door 1 or door 2, and they had this head attached to a blood-pumping, oxygenating false, limb machine, and the brain was still alive, and it could never escape. I mean, what was it going to do? Run away? Had no legs, no arms, right? Still alive, can see, can think. It's wired up to robots of some kind, and it's a slave. The Council of Worlds would step in and stop that. That's what the Zetas are telling you. And they do have powers. For instance, when Facebook, in conjunction with Israel, was trying to put up a type of internet reach for most of Africa that was like a drone that would fly around back and forth, collect your email, give you web information, etc., and that missile got shot down. I have it on my newsletters in an article called Facebook Spanked. And the reason given, according to the Zetas, was they wanted to make Africa, survivors that came to Africa, poor, struggling, a slave camp. They wanted to know what they were up to, what defenses they had, how to best, bribe them or whatever. And so it was not going to be allowed because there wasn't, the intent was bad. So some of these things get shot down, along with a lot of satellites that didn't make it up because they were likely going to spy on where migrants went, and the Council of Worlds said, they get to go where and struggle. It's too much control in the hands of the elite. So they step in to these matters, and they wouldn't allow your brain to sit so that Elon Musk could say, well, if you want to watch TV later, you got to cooperate. I want you to tell the slave drones to blah, 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 or no TV for you tonight. That could happen. So that's where we could go, and that's where the Zetas predict we will go. Not to fear, artificial intelligence is limited. Only can do what it's programmed to do. That's the end of my prepared notes. Did you have something that we should be going over? Well, we do have 3 minutes or 5 minutes yet, right, Andre?
Well, actually, I want to apologize to our listeners. Our feed has been changed over the last couple of episodes, and we've abruptly cut off at the end. No, we're not being shut down by the government at all. Although the Zeta Talk has been attacked in years past, DDoS and stuff like that. No, our feed here at what we do is we record the original episode on Blog Talk Radio and then upload it to YouTube, and Nancy does that. So, but I think that a lot of people out there who are following not necessarily Zeta Talk or Nibiru or Poleshift per se are noticing not just differences in the weather. Obviously, that's been going on for quite some time, over 10 years now, but the wobble especially, noticing that, the sun's rising and setting and way too far north where I'm at, and I see that on my social feeds too, and then it's whether or not eyes to see at this point. As the weather gets more violent and volcanoes, we've seen an uptick in volcanoes over the last 5 years, especially in the last 6 months. We've seen a lot of volcanoes on the Ring of Fire all going off at the same time. There's a volcano off the coast of Madagascar that hasn't erupted in over 5,500 years, is showing magnitude 5 earthquakes in it. So, these things are becoming part of the social media, but the mainstream media's been sort of hands off on it until they have to talk about it. They have to talk about Hawaii because there's rich people out there. I'm just saying. Leilani,
yeah, exactly.
You're building on the lava flow of a volcano that goes off regularly. what kind of insurance policy do these people have? Like one person got rescued by a helicopter yesterday. I'm like, why are you still there?
Yeah.
Just lava all around.
Hawaii.
What are you doing?
Hawaii gets so much in the news because it is where wealthy people go to retire. And if they say, "Oh my gosh, at least 10 houses have been devastated," what, 10? And you have some of these volcanoes in Indonesia or Central America that wipe out villages, and a few thousand people die on the spot. And nobody even bats. It never hits the news unless you follow the volcano websites. But yes, the fact that they're getting more active, this is well recorded in statistics. We have covered it here. It's covered in my newsletters. It's statistically evident, but the media, the worse it gets, the more silent they get, to where you would never know. Well, Hawaii isn't even notable because it's not an exploder, it's an oozer. It oozes, and it will continue to do so. And the only reason it's more active now is that the Pacific is compressing. When we had, was it 4 months ago or so, we had a big one up there just off the Aleutian Islands. It was 8.2 or something, which means it was probably an 11. But it was that was indicating, that the plates, the Zetas have the Pacific divided into quadrants, and the quadrant that runs around British Columbia down the west coast includes the Hawaii Islands all the way down to the Society Islands. Well, so consequently, the segment that's over there near Japan, etc., shoves under, the one that holds Hawaii, and that's rock layers coming under, folding over. Well, of course, the magma's going to get roily, and it did, and it is, but it's not going to be any worse than just oozing. And they have predicted an oozer for Yellowstone too. No worse than a usual regular volcano, no supervolcano, because over the years the West Coast has had subducting, and all that, those rock layers shoved under the Sierras, shoved back all the way to Yellowstone. This has created baffling, like a muffler, back and forth, zigzag, zigzag, so that when the magma comes up, it has such a ziggy-zaggy to go. It's not ejecting like a steam hose, It's just a normal volcano. So yes, a volcano. They say 100 miles away from any volcano that is active or about to be. Don't be closer than 100 miles. And of course, people do hang around volcanoes because there's rich soil. That magma coming up has the nutrients, and as the lava, crumbles to become rock, they become soil. Oh, the crops are wonderful, so they can't stay away. Well, it's treacherous stuff. Yeah.
Side question on volcanoes. Why is anybody ever asked the Zetas or posed a question to you personally or about why UFOs tend to be caught on webcams around and captured around volcanoes? Like yesterday, not mainstream media, of course, but Popo in central Mexico, next to Mexico City, near Puebla, another UFO during an eruption, zigzagging around, in and out of the crater, on webcam. It's at night, so it's just a light source, but usually the ones seen by Popocatépetl, I think is how you say it, are the saucer-shaped UFOs. So has anybody ever asked the Zetas about volcanoes and UFO activity?
Yep, they sure have. And the Zeta said they are checking emissions, the chemical nature of the emissions, and trying to gauge when there might be an explosive. See, remember, they're contactees all the time. The rule about, contactees is that you give the call, you have curiosity, you want to know, and the Zetas or whomever, because there's thousands of different life forms, they say, oh, we can bring our spaceship down and chat with you if you're willing. And most people, realizing that they are intensely curious, take them up on that. If your alien type is kind of weird looking, sometimes, they put up a little screen so you don't have to look at it and realize it's some squishy toad or something like that that's talking to you. But in any case, you get contacted. And if you want to ask about the volcano making you nervous, they can say, oh, I think you got about a week, that kind of thing. You could get that information. So they are trying to determine, they're taking a measure of the emissions, the air coming up, or whatever's spitting up, and determining the depth of the magma, what's going on underneath, what's going on with rock layers underneath, and they have many different kinds of measures, but that's one of them, and that's why they hover over volcanoes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a speculation of that too. Is, off the charts. I'm not even going into it. That they're refueling their ship. I'm like, well, when you have 0 point energy, I don't think you need magma refueling.
Oh,
I think they're probably
they don't
checking it out.
Yeah, how silly.
Right.
I mean, the difference between aliens and humans is like, we're such infants, and what we do and what we need and how we think is just not where they're at all. They're here like the Peace Corps. At least 99% of them. There is, in this whole thing about good and evil, yes, the little devil on one shoulder and an angel on the other. The devil can sit on your shoulder and whisper things in your ear if you ask it to. If you give the call and say, I'm intensely curious about just how I can murder my neighbor because I desire his wife, right? You're going to get a call not from the good guy aliens, but from the bad guys. And they're going to say, oh, you want to do this
or
that? Well, go for it. Life will be so much better for you, or whatever. But they cannot do more than just give you counseling. They can't step in and physically do things to people or change things. They can't even do UFO displays in the sky. The Council of Worlds, which is the big police force up there, says, that only the good guys can do UFO displays, or the bad guys would try to terrify people. They want to make more converts to the service to self, which is prison planets where everybody thinks selfish and is very rule-oriented, and dictatorial, and they want people to come in at the bottom of the ladder and clean the toilets so they can be higher up in the hierarchy, so they're over here trying to see who they can influence. And anytime they can increase fear or, encourage selfish activity, they will do so. But it is by choice that you talk to these people or chat with them. It is your choice to say, no, go away. I want nothing to do with you. I'm sorry I called you. Mistake, my mistake. You can do that.
Hang
and
up.
away they go.
Prank caller,
yeah.
prank caller.
That's right. That's exactly what it is. So, remember that you can just say no, so that the good guys, in fact, most worlds that spark souls, and our world is one of them. Very young, we're just babies, right? Young and very influenced, easily influenced, and then once we graduate, we get more powers and can zip around in spaceships or whatever. So 95% of all young souls that are born on such worlds become empathetic, caring, etc., and 5% have to spend more time sorting it out on prison planets. So that's why there is good and evil, but it's usually projected to be much more evil than it is. Really, there's more good. And it's increasingly moving in that direction. There's a transformation going on. It's palpable. More democracies are being born. Although the intensity, when the bad guys lose and they're being pushed off and they're losing, they get more vicious. They get more obvious. And so it can seem like it's getting worse, but it's not. They're just throwing temper tantrums. That's what's going on. Yeah.
Well, yeah, you back a rabid dog or junkyard dog into a corner, and that's what we're dealing with now.
That's what we're dealing with now. Yep, exactly. Can't even blame it on rabies.
No, not even rabies this time. It's actually just people. But it's an easy choice to make once you see it, and I think this summer we're going to see a lot more on the side of the awakening, a lot more people waking up to, hey, there's something going on in the skies, or the weather's, I better get away from the coast. What's going on up north, move up to Coltop's place up there. I don't know. But people are talking about it, so that's a good start. Don't get your programming from the mainstream media, because they're getting paid to say one thing. That's why they're there. It's advertising, and they get paid. Zeta Report and Zeta Talk don't get paid. We do it for free because we want to help you out.
Yeah, huge amount of survival info on USA ABN. The Zeta reports alone, for the last, I think, 2.5 years, we've covered everything. You can get all your vitamins and minerals from weeds and bugs, how to make windmills out of cars, etc. And it's not just the basic survival instinct, but helping each other out. The fact that if you partner with people, and sharing and caring, you become so immensely much more powerful. And this is what people are beginning to do. Not just homeless camps, it's not handouts at all. It's neighbor helping neighbor, and that type of thing. It's a lot of information, examples. Do research our archives.
Yep. It's all there. Zeta Report on YouTube. You can check out other preparedness information at usaebn.org. Thanks a lot, Nancy. I don't want to cut us off, and
I know they're going anything.
I think we got a good episode. We're gonna do it. Thank you very much for coming, and look forward to seeing the Zeta talk on this coming up this week. Thank you.
You betcha. Bye bye, people. Bye bye.